You're listening to Sudbury News Talk.
I want to show you something.
Stand by. On the morning shift.
Anything could happen.
Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.
Ten, nine, eight, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All systems go.
You're listening to Sudbury News Talk.
I want to show you something.
Stand by. On the morning shift.
Anything could happen.
Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift. I'm AJ Walsh. Glad to be here with you. Glad that you're here with us. We had a bit of a hiccup this morning, as we usually do in some way, shape, or form. And today it was another thing that never happens, but here we are. And the end result is that we end up having a show. And so I apologize for the little bit of a hiccup with our opening intro of the show this morning, but it is Monday. And that's a bit of an excuse in and of itself. It's a new month, October already, October the 2nd, 2023. I can't believe how time is flying by more and more these days. But yeah, here we are in October. And we'll get into the weather. We got some weather, some sports, news headlines, local headlines, and also still the follow-up of what happened in our parliament just recently. And what that was a bit of a black eye to Canada, not only here in our own country, but around the world as well. And trying to, deconstruct or unpack what happened there is what we are going to continue to do as the country continues to do that. So we're not sure exactly what to make of all of it, but between ourselves and our conversation here, we'll do our best. So with that, we're live on CKLU 96.7 FM. And so those listening on the radio, there was a bit of a space this morning as I was doing some technical work here. So I apologize for that before the show began. And but we're also streaming at cklu.ca. You can click on the Radio Player Canada app. You can stream us that way. You can also download the same Radio Player Canada app and take us with you and listen to us anywhere, anytime on your favorite device. We're also streaming at Facebook Live, facebook.com/Sudbury News, youtube.com/Sudbury News. It's going to be a great conversation today, a great show. We'll dive right into the weather. We'll be back with sports right after that. The Wolves are in action. 2 games this weekend. Tell you all about those and news headlines, your comments, and much, much more right after this. And Sudbury Weather brought to you by SudburyWeather.ca. You can catch all things Sudbury Weather at our Sudbury.news website. It lands on SudburyWeather.ca. So currently it is 15 degrees. There is mist out there, so be careful if you're driving. A little bit of a fog. Cloudy today with 30% chance of drizzle or showers early this morning, then a mix of sun and cloud. Risk of thunderstorm early this morning. Fog patches dissipating in the morning. And high of today of 26 with the humidex. It's 31 degrees on October the 2nd, 2023, as I see some Canada geese just heading south. So maybe they know something we don't. Sure, it's hot today, but tomorrow the geese are still heading south. So UV index today is 5 or moderate. Tonight, clear, fog patches developing overnight, wind southwest becoming light early this evening. Low of 14. Tuesday, which is tomorrow, sunny, fog patches dissipating in the morning. And high will be 27 with the humidex 31. So today, it was humid last night. I I had to have a fan on the whole time last night because it was so humid. So, 31 degrees with the Humidex today and tomorrow. Fancy that. Extended forecast, as you can see, sunny tomorrow, sunny Wednesday, high of 26 on Wednesday. It might be much of the same with the Humidex. We'll have to see. Then the chance of showers rolling in at 60% on Thursday, high of 20. 30% chance of showers on Friday, high of 13. 60% chance of showers on Saturday, high of 10. And 60% chance of showers on Sunday with a high of 7. So it's getting cooler, as you can see. 27, 26, 20, 13, 10, and 7. If that was a graph, it would be like almost falling off a cliff. Anyways, that's your Sudbury weather. But we'll head to look at the satellite for today. As you can see, some of this precipitation making its way towards us, that green blob kind of over the Great Lakes, hitting Sault Ste. Marie right now with some rain and Timmins as well. So it looks like it's heading towards us. So you can expect the possibility today of that, but then tomorrow clearing up. So that's your Sudbury weather, brought to you by SudburyWeather.ca. We'll be back with some sports headlines, news, headlines, your comments, and much, much more right after this. And Sudbury Sports brought to you by that Sudbury Sports guy, Randy Pascal's, and his website, SudburySports.com. The Sudbury Wolves were in action on Friday night and on Sunday. They indeed...
And not allow that shot off.
Yeah, sorry about that. That's going to come in a second here. I don't know how to make it bigger if I don't click on it. So not sure with all these technical things. But that's coming. And why don't we just dive right into the video? Because, here you go. Let's see here. And Ryan Price got his first goal on Friday night.
How about that one? He scored! Ryan Price, a wide open net, and gives Sudbury a 3-goal lead on a power play goal for the Wolves.
So Ryan Price with his first goal on Friday night as the Wolves went on to defeat the Brantford Bulldogs 6-2. Ryan Price got the 5th goal. Scary, though, because 30 seconds in or so, Brantford scored and just took the wind right out of the excited crowd sails because it's the first game of the season. They're excited. It's, Wolves are raring to go. And then 30 seconds in or so, Brantford scored the first goal against Jakob, the new goalie for Sudbury Wolves. So we came back. We won the game 6-2. Not so good on Sunday against the North Bay Battalion. We ended up losing that game 2-1. Next game's in Peterborough. You can catch that game right here on CKLU 96.7 FM, or Eastlink TV carries a lot of the games on television. So look forward to that. It's going to be a great season. Looks like a great team. Lots to look forward to. It's your Sudbury Sports, brought to you by SudburySports.com. We'll be back with news, headlines, your comments, much, much more right after this. Okay, here we are. We're back, and we're just kind of fumbling our way through the show this morning. It's an interesting morning, and we got a few people joining us on. It's slow going this morning for some reason, probably the algorithm. as Facebook and YouTube begin their, compliance with our federal government's Bill C-11, Bill C-18 to not share or not support the sharing of international news, national news, local news, any news, with the government's reasoning being they wanted Canadian journalists to be paid more by the tech companies. And so we're not sure how this is all going to fizzle out, but the end result will be only government-sanctioned news will be available, because they're doing their best to take away any promotion of any other kind of news other than government-sanctioned news. It is the end result of what their policies are. We're seeing it by what the results are, and it just makes it so that way, local news, wasn't really making that much money off of these platforms or anyone to begin with. The government was handing out money as basically trying to, in their words, try and help media in Canada, as the media industry has taken a huge hit with the internet, but it actually favored smaller independent outlets more. And in my view, the ones that actually went out and did real journalism, more real journalism, that is, because that's all they were doing. And they were doing it because they weren't really doing it for the money. They're doing it because they really had a passion for the industry and for getting to the bottom of stories. And if they're not being paid by the government, you have a better chance that, indeed they can hold that very same government more accountable. Unlike some of the larger outfits out there that are getting quite a bit of government money, billions of dollars. CBC, 1.2 billion of government money, your tax money, and billions and billions to all the other major outlets as well, to kind of keep them afloat. Bad side to that is that the news holding them accountable will be, they'll be held less and less accountable, because why would you want to bite the hand that feeds you? So joining us this morning, as usual, first to the table, Judy. Good morning. Thanks for being with us. Hope you're having a great Monday. And Belinda, good morning. Let's see what you have to say today. It's the heart that knows the path. The mind is just there to organize the steps. That's interesting. I'll have to ponder on that all day long. Mona, good morning. Thanks for being with us. And just to read Belinda's thing again, it's the heart that knows the path. The mind is just there to organize the steps. I think it's sinking in a little bit more to my mind what that statement means, and I do believe it's rather truthful. So let's get right into today. We'll be talking about stories that are found on our Sudbury.news news aggregator. Local news is aggregated into one convenient place at Sudbury.news. So you can go there and it puts all of the stories from Sudbury.com, Sudbury Star, CTV, Northern Ontario, and CBC, Sudbury, all located in one spot. So instead of going to all of the different locations to get your news, it's found right there. First story to start our day today. Let's see here. Well, that's interesting. How did that happen? Okay. I guess we're over here. There we are. Those are the older stories. And at the top here. So there's a networking event starting. Let's see here. When is this going again? This is a story from Sudbury Star. A lot of Sudbury Star stories today. They seem to be having a vast majority of local news. So get ready for an insightful evening dedicated to employment and entrepreneurship. Elevate 2023 is a must-attend event for professionals, job seekers, and budding entrepreneurs. That's interesting that they have all three categories, professionals, job seekers, and entrepreneurs, in one kind of job fair. It's I've never seen that before myself. It takes place October the 3rd, and it's There'll be key addresses. Let's see here. In addition to the key presentations, participants will have the opportunity to visit various booths representing different local agencies. These booths will offer valuable information, resources, and networking opportunities to help attendees find what they need to further their professional goals. Elevate 2023 will take place between 6:30 and 8:30 p.m. at the Northern Water Sports Center. For more information or RSVP, contact Tracy Spears. Tracy.Spears at sudburywc.ca. That's Tracy Spears, SPEIRS, at sudburywc.ca. Or call 673-1916, extension 101. 705-673-1916, extension 101 for that. A lot of people these days are looking for a career change, looking to advance their careers, looking for what the heck to do when they grow up. And with the recent news with Domtar and Espanola, Espanola has been doing all they can do to support those that have been affected by, the closing of the mill. We're not sure what's going to happen. The future is unknown. And so there's a job fair and expo. Apply, learn, or plan. The town of Espanola will be hosting currently hiring employers for a 2-day job fair. Also on site will be representatives of social, financial, and employment services ready to discuss the current or future needs of job seekers. That's October 6th and 7th. That's Friday and Saturday. Yes, it's on the Thanksgiving long weekend, Friday and Saturday. Where will it be? 175 Avery Drive in Espanola. It's at the complex. Bring your resume. If you need assistance updating your resume, visit employment options at 91 Tudhope Street before the job fair. And computers with printer access will be available at the Espanola Public Library during regular business hours. Printing costs apply. So, yes, there's quite a few job fairs going on, and it is good news, I guess, for those who may have been affected from the Domtar news of them no longer running the mill for, we're not sure how long. If it's forever, we hope not. We hope something's going to happen there. But for now, it doesn't look good. So Belinda says there were multiple vehicle car accident just outside Dowling over the weekend. Sadly, there was one fatality and multiple injuries. Oh, sorry to hear that. That's terrible news. So many accidents lately. Yeah, there's been a few fatalities. Drive safe, everyone, and take care out there. Monique, good morning, Sudbury. Thanks for being with us, Monique. Much appreciated. And we're looking at news headlines from Sudbury.news here. That's our news aggregator for the city's news. Valley's aerial seeding program over Coniston returns this week. So, the initiatives that we have to regreen Sudbury after the long effects of mining in the town. It did a lot of damage to the vegetation in the area, and we basically had an award from the UN for the regreening efforts of Sudbury. A lot of people who only visited Sudbury, let's say in the 70s, and have never returned. And I'll tell them when I'm traveling abroad that I'm from Sudbury, and they say, "Oh, I'm sorry." I said, no, it's changed a lot, actually. So they're continuing their aerial seeding program over Coniston. It's returning this week, so they're continuing with that. Good morning, Aaron Babin. Thanks for joining us, Aaron. Hope you're having a great Monday this morning. Road report for Greater Sudbury. This is interesting. So if you go to Sudbury.news, right on the home page, there's a story that's there from the Sudbury Star. You can look at, if you're traveling around the city and you want to know what construction's going on where, talk to Mike Perrant. We had a great conversation on Friday. He was on the show and basically talked about traffic and the new cameras they have coming out for photo radar or whatever to just automatically give people tickets if they're traveling in these zones. There's going to be 6 of them. They're going to switch them around in the city. And if you are found speeding, you will just automatically get a ticket in the mail. And so anyways, we were then talking about, well, construction as well is very frustrating in the city, trying to make your way around, trying to get somewhere quickly enough. Who's in charge of the construction? Because a lot of times it seems like construction's always in key places and it's hard to get around. Anyways, so just check out the road report, Greater Sudbury, from the Sudbury Star. CIBC Run for the Cure, Northern Ontario, raised $462 million for breast cancer research since 1992 and held in communities across Canada yesterday. Or let's see. Now I have to see. So no, that's CTV. It'll be a video, so it'll take a lot longer to load. Anyways, I'm always wondering, like, I hope we can get to a cure. I've heard some rumors out there that there have been before, people who have found things that have either, helped certain people get over it or altogether got rid of it. And it just seems that there's been a lot of money raised, and we would hope that someday, for all those who have it and have had it and it's impacted their families, that we can get to a cure at some point, that everybody can enjoy the benefits of that. It's definitely took its toll on many, many people over the years. And here's a CTV, Northern Ontario. Look at the fall foliage in the north. I heard a great comedian the other day talking about people in a, kind of a fun way. People who love to see the trees in their, in their splendor, their fall splendor, but kind of mocking the idea that they're dying, that all the trees are dying, and we're kind of loving the look of, trees dying. Anyways, it was kind of funny, but actually maybe I'll play it on a show. So we'll save that for another day. It's kind of neat because we are in fall now and the leaves are changing. As I look out my window and see many, many colors on the trees, it is rather beautiful. Okay, Ontario expands pharmacists' prescription powers. Ontario residents can now access treatment and medication for 6 additional common ailments at pharmacies across the province starting Sunday. More on that from CTV Northern Ontario, so you can check that out. What it means for you, if that actually impacts you or not. We'll get to this near the, further on in the show. Question period, talking about the standing ovations for the Nazi in our parliament. And that's, we're still talking about that for sure. That's going to be talked about for quite some time, I think. With death, there is always some form of rebirth. That is true. Thanks, Belinda. Speaking of the leaves changing on the trees in fall. But it does mean winter's coming. So those people who don't necessarily aren't necessarily a fan of winter, I'm included in that. It just means winter. We'll just have to get through winter, and then hopefully spring's going to come sooner than later again. Concerns of living wages persist amid minimum wage increases. So the minimum wage increased today in 6 provinces, but Canadians still face concerns over cost of living. That's also on CTV Northern Ontario. Here's the thing. It was $15.50 yesterday, and now it's $16.55 today, minimum wage. Kind of a big bump for those businesses that pay their labor force or pay their workers minimum wage, because that's the type of business that it is, and that's the way it's always been. There's been a minimum wage, and how many of us have made minimum wage in the past, right? It's always been part of the economy. It's always been part of life. People work for minimum wage. And I remember owning a business, several businesses actually, but I remember one in particular. I never had a paycheck for like 3 weeks, but yet my employees were getting paid minimum wage at least, guaranteed, but I would go without a paycheck, and I would be working, earlier and later, and as a business owner, and eventually lost that particular business that I'm speaking of. And so, but you hear all these advocates out there going, oh yeah, these business owners, and, they're greedy and making all this money and whatever. I don't think they see the full picture of what's going on. Sure, we all deserve to make more, but there has to be at least something established as a minimum. And heck, if we weren't taxed to the hilt all over the place, maybe the minimum wage would suffice. But as inflation is rampant and as we're taxed to no end, and now you're going to say that increasing the minimum wage is the answer to this, you're just basically on a race to the bottom. Inflation's just going to spiral because businesses, they're already being burdened so much financially. And now, sure, everyone needs more money, but that's not the answer. Like, if you just keep increasing the minimum wage and you increase the cost, increase the minimum wage, increase the cost, where does it all end? You don't get a handle on things, right? So, sure, I guess there could be some people that just say, yeah, you need to raise the minimum wage. There's the idea of a living wage that's been going on around. It's a Marxist idea, a communist idea where everybody gets paid the same. That's what it's about. It's coming in being all caring and everything. Yeah, we need to take care of those who make a limited amount of money, but the end result is that everyone makes the same amount of money. Make everybody on minimum wage or a living wage. Okay, so Naomi says it's ridiculous, for sure. Okay, so Ontario minimum wage up to $16.55 per hour. Sudbury Star sharing a few stories here over the weekend, I found. There, we'll get to that a little bit later. Okay, there's two of them. So first of all, we talked about the arena with Mike Parent on the show the other day. And, there's some people in the city who say, just leave the thing alone. Like, why we care so much. And good morning, Vin. Hope you're having a good morning on this Monday. A lot of people say, hey, what the heck? Why are we so concerned about an arena? We got other things we need to worry about. And that's the problem, because we should be concerned about an arena. We shouldn't have to worry that we can't fix our roads and, take care of our downtown and all these things. They should all be taken care of. And we should have a new arena. Like, really, other communities do it, have done it, will continue to do it. And KED, LOL, yeah, exactly. So all that took, I don't know how many years of our time, and we're still at the same place. It's like Sudbury just can't get it done. What is up with Sudbury? The oldest arena in the OHL. And 70 plus years old. So this particular letter to the Sudbury Star, though, feels they agree with Councillor Montpellier, who feels, that we just need to put paint on it and let the teams play, as long as the painting company isn't the same clowns who painted the old hospital. So that's Denis. And then Roger, love that name, says, let owners build a new arena. So there's a few different points of view here from different people chiming into the Sudbury Star. As I have mentioned in the past, let Dario Zulich and his buddies build an arena for their professional hockey and basketball teams. Why on earth do taxpayers have to spend tax money on a white elephant, of which most taxpayers won't even go near or close to? It's time to save the taxpayer, not bankrupt them. Well, that's a whole case against our medical system that we have here, right? Like, why do I pay taxes when I don't go to the hospital? I never go to the hospital. Why do I have to pay as high taxes as I do? Never had an operation. Don't utilize any of the services there. Do my best to stay healthy, to not have to go there. So why does my tax money have to be taken for our socialized health care? You know? So that's a good argument for that as well. But you can make the argument that, no, it's for the community. You can go there if you want. The hospital is there if I do need it. So it's kind of like paying insurance. You know, if you look at what I've paid for it, though, I probably paid $1 million and then I'm getting $10,000 worth of service. But at the same time, it's kind of like insurance is. You pay way more than you get. So those are two comments, people agreeing with Councillor Montpellier that we don't need a new arena. Someone else saying, sure, build a new arena, but let the private sector pay for it. Why do taxpayers have to pay for it? This is something we're going to be talking about for a while. I've approached a friend of mine that to see if we can maybe put a think tank together, to getting all the major stakeholders of the city together, those that have been here for a while and have made a good amount of money from this city, seeing if they might have some suggestions as to how we can make this thing happen so that it's not just on the backs of taxpayers and it's not just on one particular organization or another, and try and think out ways that this particular initiative could be lucrative and pay for itself and maybe make some money over and above, right? Because it's possible. Anything's possible. And we can take the good, the bad, and the ugly from what other communities have done. That's the great thing about being the last, and we are the last to build an arena. So we can take the, all the best and worst of things that other communities have done. Have at her. We have the advantage of that now. Why do this? Why do that when all these other places did that and they made mistakes? We don't need to make the same mistakes. How can we do this right? Imagine that, Sudbury doing something right. We have done things right in the past. Look at the regreening. Why don't we look at that same thing? Say, wow, we've done something really innovative. We had a problem. No one agreed on anything. It was very polarizing, but yet we took all the best of the elements and possibilities that were out there, and we made an arena. And it makes money. And it's not on anyone's dime. Everyone wins. It's possible, and it can happen. So I think if we put a think tank together, other than the people that have been trying already, because what's the definition of insanity? Why don't we get this thing done? So much money has been spent on the arena debate. So wonder what the price tag of that is. Yeah, for sure. It's millions. It's in the millions for sure. Just got here. Good morning, Brian. A lot of late arrivers this morning, so that's fine. That's fine. I'm feeling a little bit Monday-ish myself, so. Yeah, so Sudbury letter honoring a Nazi, an insult to our veterans. So this is in response of what happened in our parliament. Recently, Speaker Anthony Rota introduced Yaroslav Hunka, a Ukrainian-Canadian war veteran from the Second World War who fought for Ukraine independence against the Russians, and Ukrainian hero and a Canadian hero, quote, from Anthony Rota. I understand that you and all MPs in attendance responded with applause and a standing ovation. I'm extremely surprised that you, nor anyone else in the chamber, did not understand that any Ukrainian who fought the Soviets, just not the Russians, in the Second World War was our enemy. Is your grasp of recent history that weak? So remember, I played excuse me. I played a clip from a news source that was, InfoWars, right? So somebody had an exception to that. They're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you're playing that. Well, you can't see it anywhere else. But he was noticing that Anthony Rota, when he read that, his eyebrow went up and he was like, whoa, wait a minute. So just like this person writing into Sudbury Star, is the same thing. He's like, wait a minute, did anyone not know that anyone who fought against the Russians was our enemy in World War II? So if you would have known that, if anyone would have known that, but yet you all stood up and applauded this particular person after hearing that even. Excuse me for a sec. There you go. So what the heck was up with that? Now I know Natalie's chiming in here, going back to our story probably with the new arena. So this is Natalie Labby, a Ward 7 counselor. I've been asking for the past year, why do we not have a key sponsor putting their name on our arena? That's exactly what I was asking as well. Apparently, that type of naming, rights, something we finally have presented to council soon. Okay, cool. Like over 10 years, $40 million of revenue operating the arena, but I digress. Okay, it's not a concept everywhere else, but just one example how Sudbury is stuck behind the times for sure. There's so many opportunities here. There are. And so my discussion with my friend on Sunday, hopefully, will yield us being able to get together. Why can't we have a separate think tank, right? Or of volunteers, of stakeholders who might have something valuable to say, because they would be the very people who could bring the resources to the table to bring this to pass, right? Just a think tank, and then present that to council and whatever their findings are, and council can take it or leave it, But I think us as citizens and stakeholders of the community need to do that as well, to see what ideas we have. Every one of them. And so back to the story of the debacle in Ottawa with the Nazi getting a standing ovation. Every one of them in Parliament, this is Belinda, cheered for the Nazi. Every Parliament member should get the resignation. Okay, tell me they don't know who fought against Germany in World War II. Ignorance doesn't wash with me this one. Good morning, David. Hope you're staying safe as usual. That's your mantra. And I hope you're feeling better these days and on a recovery. So Jesse says, because Sudbury reputation is killing people with Oxycontin. Well, for sure, that's definitely a crisis with that here as well, which we'll be talking about to the nth degree on the show in the future, obviously, because it's not going away. It is only getting worse. So this particular person writing into Sudbury Star is extremely surprised that nobody knew history when he said, this particular person fought against the Russians, and we knew that the Russians were on the side of the Allies during World War II. So obviously that we were fighting the Germans. So anyone fighting Russia would have been fighting for the Germans. So it would have been on the German side, right? So this is just proof that nobody can ever make up for their sins. Yeah, it's like, I guess that's a personal thing people will do. And publicly, it's harder to do. Politically, it's very political. So the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center for Holocaust Studies issued a statement saying the division was responsible for mass murder. The division that the particular Hunka belonged to was responsible for murders of innocent civilians with a level of brutality and malice that is unimaginable. Apparently, that was his regiment that he belonged to. Apparently, had to do with killing women and children, like going in and just, killing citizens and a lot of Jewish citizens at that. So it was a very brutal regiment he belonged to, like on top of the fact of him already being a Nazi. So that was pretty crazy. My father and my uncle and my wife's father and her two uncles were in the Canadian Army in the Second World War, and they fought in Europe in Normandy, through Belgium, through the Netherlands, and northern Germany. One of her uncles died in Germany in April 1945. Most of the men I knew while I was growing up were in the Canadian Armed Forces during that war. One of our aunts worked in the John Inglis factory in Toronto making Bren gun parts for her husband who was in Europe. Fortunately, John returned. It's shameful that the governing political party, which you're a part, led a standing ovation to a Nazi war criminal in Canada's parliament. Speaker Rhoda called Hunka a Canadian hero. None of the Canadians who lived in the generation before me would call Yaroslav Hunka a Canadian hero. Neither do I. Your government owes a whole generation a sincere apology. Yeah, so that is crazy stuff. Tracy saying, late to the game today. No problem. And you'll watch the live stream. Good morning to everyone. Hope you have a good day as well. Brian saying this is a huge embarrassment, which I do agree with. And I know CTV took a bit of time to talk about this as well. So let's just have the ones that have been paid to, and this is their job to do, discuss this a little bit more at length. We'll be back right after this.
I also want to reiterate how deeply sorry Canada is for the situation this put President Zelensky and the Ukrainian delegation in.
It took several days, but Prime Minister Justin Trudeau did eventually apologize on behalf of Parliament for honoring a veteran during Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's visit to Canada last week, who, it turns out, was a Nazi. The apology came after intense political pressure and countless international headlines. Now, the feds may be facing scrutiny from allies once again, with the news they're planning to cut nearly $1 billion from the defense budget. Just about 2 months after they signed on to a pledge with NATO to spend 2% of GDP on defense. Our Sunday strategy session is here to unpack all of that. Kathleen Monk is a former NDP strategist and director of communications to the late Jack Layton. Corey Teneycke was Ontario Premier Doug Ford's campaign manager and former director of communications for Prime Minister Stephen Harper. And Scott Reid is a CTV News political analyst and former communications director to Prime Minister Paul Martin. Hi, everybody.
Hey there.
Good to see you. Corey, I'll start with you. There was obviously a lot of international reaction to what unfolded in the House of Commons during or right after President Zelensky's remarks, but there was some domestic back and forth as well. Do you think the Prime Minister's apology in the middle of the week kind of blunted that?
I think it largely did. It's still a very embarrassing thing to have occurred, and I think it's going to echo on long into the future in terms of one more thing on the list of faux pas by this government, where it'll be added to the list of passports and other missteps. But I think the applause line or laugh line at the end is going to be, and even had everyone stand and applaud for a Nazi in the House of Commons. So I think it's going to leave a scar. But I'm not sure really where the story goes from here. It's happened. Apology has been made. The speaker has resigned. I think all of those things are appropriate. But it's going to leave a scar. But I'm not sure it really is going to be dominating question period in the weeks to come. That's for sure. Well, in fact, Corey's right, Scott. The next day it stopped. Basically, on Thursday, I noticed the Conservatives move on to focus back on economic issues, primarily the price on carbon or the carbon tax. Does that signal to you that largely the domestic political back and forth is kind of over?
It does, and it should. I mean, what place would you go to next? I mean, the Speaker clearly made the mistake. The Speaker accounted for that by resigning. The Prime Minister, I think correctly, apologized for the spectacle of it as head of government on behalf of the entire House. I frankly thought that the Conservatives were a bit unhinged. I just thought that the tone and the tenor from the Conservatives is the grandest diplomatic embarrassment of all time. It's like, really? Okay, first of all, it's not a competition. Okay, this was an awful thing that occurred. It was an embarrassment. You don't need to just crank it constantly through the partisan wood splitter. So yeah, I think the week is behind us, and I don't think it's going to come up a lot again. Kathleen, the opposition, and it was primarily the Conservatives, but the NDP were critical of the feds too, had a little bit of space to do so
or a vacuum was created to do so, because it's not like the speaker resigned right away, nor did the prime minister step out right away, to be fair, right? Like it took a few days. At this, I totally understand the critique of how far they took it, but there was that like window that they were able to provide them with almost.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm most interested in unpacking, or understanding why the Prime Minister made and the Prime Minister's office made the decisions they did. They could have gotten out ahead of this. In some ways, the Prime Minister was waiting for kind of a fictitious sequencing to happen. They wanted the Speaker to resign first. They were worried about stepping into the Conservatives' over-exaggerated rhetoric and the trap that they were setting them, like what Scott was just saying. But they didn't need to wait. They could have gotten out ahead of it. They could have just done the right thing and apologized right away. And that, to me, I wonder, is a bit of a tell. Last week with the India allegations, they were out on offensive footing. They were out there. They were, on their front foot, and they were leaning in hard. And maybe it was because the Prime Minister was out there on that ledge for so long by himself and kind of getting a lot of international kind of pushback towards the beginning of last week, that maybe they were a bit more timid with this.
The other story that's starting to generate international reaction, Corey, is the fact that now, according to General Wayne Eyre, the Chief of Defense Staff, they're going to cut $1 billion annually from the national defense budget, just a few months after they agreed to another NATO pledge to say that they'd try and meet at least 2% of GDP as qualified as defense spending. Do you think there are domestic ramifications for something like that?
Well, I know Scott and David and others will disagree with me strongly on this, that they think there's no consequence, but I think there can be. I think there can be, and this cut of $1 billion is also has to be framed in the context of them sending $9.5 billion in military aid to the Ukraine, and including weapon systems that the Canadian military has been asking for a generation, like surface-to-air missiles, and basically they're saying no to very primary equipment and capacity within our own military, while exporting to another country those things. While simultaneously moving in the exact opposite direction that the United States and other NATO allies are looking to Canada to move in. So,
yeah, so there you have it. It's I like the fact that they had the three people on representing the three major parties in Canada, and you can tell how they have different views on it. And I think the Conservative particular person representing them as well was very, very lenient. He said, well, now that we're done it, like, what can be worse than applauding a Nazi in Parliament? That's pretty much the cherry. And he said, no matter what, when somebody is looking back, they're going to end it with, and they went as far as applauding for a Nazi in Parliament, basically saying that. And so I guess Dave is back. I haven't seen you for a while, Dave. I kind of missed you. So what are you saying here? We're so upset about the Canadian Parliament applauding a Nazi. So you're not, obviously. So that's interesting. But okay with the group of convoy people who were flying Nazi flags. Were they? Were the Freedom Convoy people flying Nazi flags? Do you have any proof of that? So can you please put in the text the name of the person who is flying the Nazi flag? Because there was one, right? So we should know his name, and we should know that he was part of the convoy. So please put his name in the chat. I'd appreciate that, because I'd like to know, because I haven't heard that myself. Okay, so as comments are coming in here. So I don't understand the point that you're making here, Dave, at all. So we weren't concerned with the Nazi flag. I think I heard that on the news, I don't know how many times, and heard the Prime Minister talking about that, and still to this day references that. So I think he's made a big deal of it. I think it's the gift that kept on giving for him. But now it's kind of a slap in the face, because he's the one who applauded an actual Nazi, didn't just send someone down to the convoy to act like a convoy person, and then say that the convoy people had a Nazi flag. You know what I mean? He's actually applauding an actual Nazi for real, not just a plant that he could then accuse of being part of a group. It's interesting. So, okay, so So Vin says, as much as I agree, the House needs to move on and address every other issue and problem the party has created. Their demand to scrub this from history. Yeah, that's something we didn't talk about on the show. They actually made a motion to delete any of that from history itself. So we wouldn't even look back and, it's like, hey, remember that time they applauded the watch? I'll show you on Google. Look, I'm sure I know it happened. Wait a minute here. Look, no, it's not there. They actually made a motion to erase the fact that even happened from history. It shows you the mentality of the ruling party we have in power right now. Like they wanted to just say, instead of sorry, let's just erase it so no one would know we did this. Right? That's not very accountable. Why did it take so long? Why did he go on vacation for 2 days after that, the prime minister, not being able to be talked to and questioned? He put his deputy prime minister there, who's pregnant, to face all the hard questions and then said, and then made the speaker resign, who's a member of his own party, and say that it was all his fault when he truly, when you see him reading that thing, he didn't know what he was reading. He read, wait a minute, he fought against the Russians, and his eyebrows went up. So if he would have wrote that, if he indeed was just responsible for this happening, he would have wrote what he said on the page. He would have, because he invited this person. He would have known his background already. He wouldn't have been surprised as he was reading the fact that he was fighting the Russians. So the prime minister made him resign, and now everyone's like, well, it's the right thing. He was only responsible. No, it wasn't. I'm not going to live with that. He wasn't responsible. The Speaker of the House, sure. He was a scapegoat, but it's not done. Excuse me. So anyways, yeah, but we need to move on. Obviously, there's lots of things to deal with here. And there's a conversation now going on. So I want to see whose comments are the conversation and who's not. Sorry, so he did not, capital N-O-T. The photo circulating is outside the Speaker's office, not the PMO's. I'm not sure what you mean by that exactly. About the photo that's circulating. Okay, so really sorry, it doesn't cut on this case. Trudeau is so diligent on passing bills that criminally suppress our freedoms. I find it hard to believe that he knew nothing about this. We know where Justin and Christina's alliance is. The writing is on the wall, and you better have another look at it for sure. Mona says Trudeau needs to resign. What an embarrassment. Okay. In every so-called apology, Trudeau never once uses the term I. That's true. I was going to say that too. He says Canadians did a bad thing. I'm a Canadian. I didn't applaud a Nazi in Parliament. I never would have done that. I never would have applauded for the war in Ukraine, for that matter, and sending billions of dollars to the Ukraine while cutting $1 billion out of our own military budget at the same time. That's very not good for optics alone. Wow. It just keeps getting more juicy and more juicy. So Edward says, sure has. Not all the convoy's original demands still amounted to an illegal coup. Okay, I haven't seen you on the show before, Edward, but thanks for joining us. Much appreciated. So with that, let's see here. I had something from a friend this morning. So this is from X, formerly Twitter. From Eva Chapuik. Looks like, says, it's not a joke to suggest someone is overthrowing the government, quote unquote. It is a serious criminal offense in Canada which no one from the Freedom Convoy protest in Ottawa has been charged. The responsibility for this false narrative lies with our government officials, politicking for political ends rather than being truthful and accountable. This false narrative should have been quashed immediately for the benefit of all Canadians. Instead, it was and continues to be used as a political weapon to divide citizens. It's a shame that our leaders did this to Canadians and no one had the fortitude to call them out from the onset. Can we grow up, Canada? We are allowed to challenge our government. In fact, democracy demands it. Throughout history, citizens have challenged their government. Our institutions are run by humans who can be in power, who can be power hungry and can overreach. It is the responsibility of citizens to demand accountability. So you look at Britain in 1979, and no one suggested that the miners' strike that took place then was an attempt to overthrow the government. And there was violence. It was citizens demanding accountability from their elected officials. Obviously, I'm not advocating for violence, but let's get the facts straight about what did not happen in Ottawa with the Freedom Convoy protests. The Superintendent of Intelligence for the OPP gave evidence saying that the lack of serious violence was shocking. So the OPP, Superintendent of Intelligence for the OPP, said the lack of serious violence was shocking. Please, let's grow up, citizens, as a country. To our leaders, can you please start leading by example and uniting Canadians rather than dividing them? So compared to the miners' strike in Britain, 1979, the striking miners faced off against police forces backed by Thatcher's government. In clashes that often turned violent, the stakes were high on both sides. Scargill compared the strike to Britain's fight against Nazi Germany, while Thatcher viewed it as an opportunity to crush militant labor unions for good. So there were reasons behind this, political reasons going on. And you need to be able to see the politics that happens and why people are doing what they're doing. Documents declassified in 2014 revealed that Thatcher considered calling out the military to transport food and coal, and even declaring a state of emergency in order to strengthen her government's position. So she was going to do something similar to what Justin Trudeau did, but didn't. Some of the worst violence occurred in South Yorkshire, including a standoff between at the British Steel coking plant in Orgreave on June 18th, 1984, involving 10,000 miners, 5,000 police officers. When the smoke cleared, 51 miners and 72 police officers had been injured in what became known as the Battle of Orgreave. Dozens of miners were arrested, but the government's prosecution of them fell apart after it emerged that the police had fabricated evidence, among other wrongdoings. And so, learning history, seeing what happened in other governments, and knowing what's happening here should be able to allow us to see what's happening. And there's a lot of things that were said that I'm just asking questions, right? So it's been said that someone had a swastika during the convoy, and that was the convoy people. So all the convoy people had, believed that was, they believed that someone should have a flag representing them. No. Who had the flag? We still don't know to this day. Was it a plant? Could it have been planted? Was it possible? We don't even know, right? So until you do your job, find out who it was, find out what, were they part of the convoy? Were they a plant? We don't know. But obviously there's people on here who believe it, right? So that's the danger of the kind of government we have here, setting us up to be able to fight each other instead of being united. And I think that's the reason for it. United we stand, divided we fall, right? So whether it's on purpose or it's either it's incompetence or it's on purpose. And that's all I got to say. So, Okay, so that's the show for today. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. Thanks for commenting, everyone. Appreciate it. Stay tuned now for Earshot Daily on CKLU 96.7 FM. We'll have a lot more to talk about on this issue and many, many more, whether it's things that happen in Sudbury or abroad. We appreciate the radio that we're on, CKLU. We appreciate Facebook and YouTube, the platforms. We appreciate all of you for commenting. So make sure to come back and be part of the conversation. Same time, same place tomorrow. Have a great day, everyone. Ciao.
This is Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.